My name is Beth Hiley here with Board Game Geek at Spiel 2012. I'm sitting with Mike Fitzgerald, which I've been told, 40-year veteran of radio personality in New York.
Yes, not on the air anymore, but I was for a long time. Yes. Very nice to see you, Beth.
Nice to be here. And as I'm thrilled, as a self-published game, which is Hooyah!
Hooyah,
the
yes.
Navy SEALs card game. Now, before we get into just showing the game, we were just discussing that I had asked if you were a Navy SEAL or had been one.
No, what happened was the president of the game company of U.S. Games, who I've done a lot of games for over the years, called me the day after bin Laden was killed by the Navy SEALs and said, Mike, I think we could do something and maybe should do something as a tribute to the Navy SEALs in a game. So I said, boy, that sounds like fun. Let me try. So I worked on first a solitaire game for a long time, for 6 months, and then I expanded it out to multiplayer. It's a co-op, and I knew from the beginning it would be a co-op. I didn't want to have somebody against the Navy SEALs. But it's a game, it's a tribute to what these men do, and it tries to represent the tension and the teamwork that's necessary. The game itself is abstract. It's not a detailed simulation of anything with the Navy SEALs. However, the missions you're on are actual Navy SEAL missions. Their details are in the rule book and on the mission card. The SEALs themselves are actual Navy SEAL titles, and there is something in what they do that represents their Navy SEAL role.
Well, you were saying also that you did a lot of research.
A lot of research. We had a Navy SEAL help us, an ex-Navy SEAL. We had an author who had written Navy SEAL books. That's where I discovered, for instance, that in a Navy SEAL team, there's one person, and he's a lieutenant commander who makes the major decisions, and he's always leading the team into battle. He's not holding back in some office. He's out there, first in, last out usually. So I knew this was an opportunity for me to put the lead role in a different player each time, because if you know about co-ops, we all do, the one thing I don't like about co-ops is when one of my friends will be a bully and tell everybody what to do. And I say, you know, you could play the game yourself, just play solitaire. What are we here for if he's saying, you do this, you do that. No, he's excited about the game. That's, some co-ops will get you stirred up the way. But at least in this game, there's one person who can say, sorry, I'm the lieutenant, I'll do what I want to do, and I'll tell you when to do it, yes. Each player will have a lot of decisions to make, but how the game goes, whether you win or lose, is going to be on the lieutenant. So what you find in our playtest groups, people would like to trade being lieutenant, and they would keep track of their own record as lieutenant, because they sort of take some responsibility in how they do.
their success rate and mission success rate. All right, why don't you walk us through what to expect on a turn?
Okay. Well, what we have here, this is a mission card. This is the compound raid. This is the Operation Neptune Spear was called for the SEALs. This was the mission to capture or kill Osama bin Laden.
And that is the accurate name of that mission.
Yes, this is everything in the game and the history of what we're allowed to know.
Right.
And fortunately, they've released a lot on several missions. So we have 5 missions in the game and a 6th promo mission that are all accurate missions. So on the right here is what you have to do to win the mission, which is when you get through 5 ops, because these are all the prepare and leading into the area, you've got to be able to complete the final steps. And the game is pretty simple. We have 5 colors that go with Navy SEAL skills. Yellow is air support, air skill. They're all pilots, they all have to be. Red is marksman and shooting. Every Navy SEAL must be a marksman expert. They can't just be an average marksman, they have to be an expert. And blue is for the diving, the water skills, which obviously are huge for Navy SEALs.
Right.
So this simulates the helicopters coming into the compound, the shooting, and then the getting him to the ocean, basically, where they deposited Osama bin Laden. So that's represented abstractly with that ending. What you have to do, everybody is a SEAL. Here's the Lieutenant Commander card. So these are actual roles in the Navy SEAls. They each have special abilities. For the lieutenant, he's the only person who can call a roll call, which will help the team know how many cards they have at any given time in the game of what colors before they go on a mission. He can also, every Navy SEAL can draw up to 5 cards when doing a marksman skill check. Normally a skill check would make you draw 3 cards, but because they're all marksmen, they can all draw 5 cards. And the lieutenant's special ability, he can play 4 cards of one color to represent 2 cards of another color. So if he can't get the right color, because this is all about playing the sets of cards you need to advance, he can go to 4 cards to get the 2 of any other.
Now I'm just looking at my own power. I happen to have the medic here in front of me, so it looks like my special ability is at the completion of an ops, I may choose any player, including myself, and give them an extra health token, which I'm guessing are these.
They are these. We have an extra supply. We start the game with 5 normally. This mission says start the game with 1 fewer health tokens for each player. So on this mission, we start with 4. And the medic's very helpful in this mission. You'll find, depending on the mission, you might want, there are 10 Navy SEALs to choose from. You may want to use different mixes of the roles depending on the mission.
What's the maximum players for this?
4.
So 10 roles across 4 players. That's going to give you quite a bit of variability for quite a long time.
Solitaire, I play at Solitaire a lot. You go through all 10 because you only need 1 role to play Solitaire, and it doesn't have to be the commander.
Right. Because you can command yourself.
Yeah. So on a turn, what we do first, we set the time counter for an op based on the numbers on these 2 cards. Every op has 2 cards. So 3 and 3 makes 6. Last time I checked. So you set the dial for 6. The lieutenant commander goes first. On a turn, you draw 2 cards. You can draw 1 of the 5 face-up provisions or 1 from the deck. Now, as you go further in the game, each op you complete, the lieutenant has to remove 1 of the provisions. So you go down to 4 face-up, 3 face-up. By the time you're here, it's just 1 face-up card, which limits your choices, but you can still draw from the deck.
Right.
So it's good to get a good starting hand, get things off to a good start. So the lieutenant, since I have 3 blues, 3 red, I would take a blue card, for instance, and I might take a cross-training card. This is a wild card. It can be anything. Some of the cards have equipment on them. So this card, for instance, can be a red card, just all red by itself, or it can be used for its equipment. This card plus any 2 other cards equals 1 of any color.
Right.
Any player can play 4 of a color to get 1. I can play 4 to get 2 because of my role. This card allows you to play 3 to get 1. This card and 2 others. So a lot of the cards are ways to get different colors out of them because at times you'll get a lot of the same color, you'll just not have enough otherwise. So I would do that for my turn. Then we would pass the counter to you and it would go down to 5. You would draw 2. And this would be refilled here to 5. And then it goes back and forth. Now the next time it's my turn, the lieutenant can call a roll call after he draws cards on any of his turns. Normally you do it every turn once other players have cards. So I would draw 2. Let's say that you have this card and this card from your last draw. Right. And I'll put even my cards down to show you how this works. So I would call roll call. So starting with you, you must tell me 1 number and 1 color. Now obviously it's going to be one of these 2 colors, the blue or the red, because that's what we're trying to do right now. You must tell me the most of that color you could possibly make. So in your case now, you're either going to bid 1 blue or 1 red.
Right, so we'll say 1 blue.
Okay. I do the same thing, and keep in mind, if I bid the blues, for instance, I must do the most I can possibly do. So that adds the wild card. So I would say 2 blues, so we know we'd have all our blue covered. But let's say the next time around, hands haven't changed too much, and I'm bidding again. This time I've got to say 2 red, even though I've used the same wild card for both. It's not perfect information. So the lieutenant must decipher and just get a feeling for how many a person can play. But it could contain wild cards, it contain effects of equipment. So you don't get, because you're out, the idea is you're out on a team mission, you're not able to communicate at your own leisure.
If you're drawing from the deck, you're not going to know without that roll call what the players have drawn.
That's right. So you keep doing it till, like, if you're bidding 4 blue and I'm bidding 4 blue, and there's still time on the clock, hopefully, because when you get to 0, you can actually still be drawing cards, but when you pass it at 0, you lose a health.
Okay.
On the other side, if you go earlier, before it goes 0, and let's say there's 3 on it, and we get through the whole ops, which I'll explain next, but that 3 turn into health. So I'd get 3 extra health to give us.
Because we finished our
among
mission
us. So there's a great reward to being early on starting these ops, and the reward for not being early is you'll have a lot of cards. These are the 2 resources in the game, health and cards. Cards are great because they solve these, they solve a lot of the events I'll show you next, but they don't turn into health. Health can turn into cards because when you get to 0, you can keep passing and drawing more cards. So lieutenants will vary in how they do this. For those of us that play the game a lot, I have a friend who is all about cards. So he'll draw as many cards as possible, and he just gets by on health, he hopes. And when he loses, it's because somebody loses health. If one player goes down to 0 health, the game's over.
All right, so you cannot leave a man behind.
That's right. That's on the back of our t-shirt. I like health, so I will try to go early and build up these huge piles of health to sustain some of the events, which I'll describe. They get harder as you go along. And then I try to get by with what cards we have and draw extra if we need them. So what happens when we have our cards is the lieutenant will say Hooyah. I can say it after my turn, after roll call, or I can wait till you go, and you can say to me, for instance, say we're short 1 red, and you draw red. You can say to me, you know, Mike, I think we should go now. You know, you can't say I got a red card, but you can say, you know, I really think we should go. And if I trust you on that, and I feel confident we can, I can call Hooyah on your turn.
All right.
Because it's called before the passing of the time counter, and that's the number that stays.
So before a potential loss of health, if we're at 0.
So let's just say it started on your turn and we still had a 3. The first thing that happens before we play, because it'd be a simple game if we just play 3 red and 3 blue now, we got them and we play them, we're fine. But we got to face events. These op cards have numbers on them that are just for the ops. The bottom section of the card either has an event or is blank. These are the events you face now before you start solving this. The way it works, the number of events you draw is the number of the op you're on. We're on the first op, plus the number of players. So there's first op, 2 of us. There are 3 events we have to face. And they start with whoever has the time counter. So you're lucky when you get the time counter. So the first event says air skill check.
Okay.
What this means is you can either discard a yellow card, which you don't have at the moment, but if you could and you didn't need it for this, you could say, oh, I can discard that. Or you get to draw the top 3 cards and hopefully see yellow. So we'll do that for you.
All right, let's
1.
see.
Now that would count as yellow because it's wild. If we looked at 3 cards and no yellows, you'd lose a health. Okay. That's the penalty for failing a skill check.
And I assume there's various ones for
most of the events are skill checks.
Okay.
And we'll see. And if we get one of the others, I'll explain it or I'll show you. Another air check for me. I actually have a yellow. We don't need it there.
Pause for 1 second.
Sure.
We're just going to wait for the announcement to go by. They can still hear us, but when we go and edit the sound later, it's really hard. I have enough German to know that that's the get out message.
Oh, they're telling the public to get out.
English. Oh, that's a surprise.
It's like on the airplane, we got both.
Thank you for coming, and please get out.
Yes.
All right, continue.
So here I would discard 1 yellow and cover it that way and not risk the draw. And the last event goes to you. It's a blank, so nothing happens. And each op, obviously, the events go up and up and up. But let me just give an example of a couple of the different events that will be worse depending on where you are. First of all, this is a good one to see. It says, look at the mission card and do the mission event. Every mission has a little space in the upper right that says mission event, and it's different for every mission. So when this card comes up, you do what that says, which is lose 1 health in this case.
Ew.
So if that came up, you lose a health. The ones that are nasty are these. This says, discard 1 card for each completed op. If no completed ops, still discard 1. So right now, if we got this, we just discard 1 card. If you get it up here, you're discarding 4 cards.
Yeah.
And you got to think, boy, what 4 can I discard and still be able to do the op? There are 2 cards that let you cancel events. So you they're called chatter boxes. They're a red equipment card. They help to have for that purpose, or just get enough cards. The other similar one is the health version of that. So we attack both the health and the cards, and there's 6 of each of these in here, so they will come up. Lose 1 health for each completed op. So if these come up later, these are the ones that can be most tough. However, a lot of skill checks where you're losing health will also be a problem. So you just do each op. You have a prepare phase before each one. When you get to the 5th one, this is 6 yellow you need for this one. When you get to this point, there is no space between doing this and doing these colors on the final mission card. So what happens is there's no more drawing cards once you start on this one. So what do you need right now? Well, you need 8 yellow.
Right, that's 6 on the board.
3 red and 2 blue. So you're trying to find that out through roll calls, which means that about halfway through the ops, you're also trying to prepare for this last onslaught to be ready. This number of events, when you are already here, it's the 5th op with 2 players, it'd be 7 of them. So each of us would get 3 and one would get 4 events.
Now, when we set this countdown, is it still just the sum of
It's
the
just
ops on the
yes,
table?
it is.
Oh,
Yes, it
so
is.
you
So you
do
gotta
not have much time to prepare.
No, you want
That
extra
double
cards
whammy.
before then. When you clear this, you'll still get extra health if you have it, or the medic will give extra health. Then you go right to 1 event each and try to win the mission right at that time. So the game,
that's the only way you win the game.
That's it. The game builds. It has, I wouldn't say it's easy early because you can still get stuck, but for the most part, you'll get through the first few once you get the hang of it. Then the real skills become in how you're prepared for the finals. There are 5 different missions. This is the basic one. Some of them use what we call an insertion card, which is a card that has the same back as the ops and events. And it tells you on the mission where to mix it in. And you might be trying to find a hostage, you might be looking for a high value target, depending on the game. And so when you get that, then the rules will tell you what happens, but that may change things for the rest of the mission. And that's Hooyah. Very, very nice solitaire. 1 to 4 works very well. It's tighter than most co-ops. There aren't a lot of there aren't like, you're not trying to convince somebody to go here or go there.
Right.
You're just, each player gets a feel that they're building their hand. And they get very territorial about their hand, as they should, and their health, because if one of them is out, they lose for everybody.
Right.
So there's a lot of effort to make sure you balance in hand size with how you play. When you play the cards, one last thing, when you play the cards out, you're playing as many as you want, and then the next person plays. You can play around and around. So I could start by playing 1 blue, let's say, because I don't want to commit to wild yet.
Not
because
knowing
maybe all the other players will do the rest for me and I can save the wild for another op.
Yes, yeah.
But when you get to a point where everybody seems to have played and somebody's passing, for instance, they can't come back in, then you realize you got to play these. But as you develop the skill for the roll call and the playing of the cards, you'll find ways to succeed at the missions.
Now, how long would a typical game take? Let's say with 4
30
players?
to 45 minutes.
So
45 minutes for a first game, certainly. And a little more, well, that's the most maybe with 4 players. Solitaire, 15, 20 minutes, 2 players, 3 players, a half hour probably.
All right,
something like
so
that.
that's definitely a speedy game.
Yes, there's 4 levels of difficulty. Where we're playing on the printed mission cards would be the 2nd level. It's what I recommend for anybody to start with. If you have trouble at this level, there's an easier version of each mission, just one little change, and that's in the rule book. There's also a harder version of each individual mission. For this one, this is lose 2 health instead of 1. And then there's a super hard version for everything, because some of these events have a blank, and that means nothing happens. So when you get a blank one like this, instead of saying, oh, wow, nothing happened, you keep drawing till something happens. That's the hard one. So even solitaire, I have a lot of trouble with that one.
Definitely not recommended for your first game.
But I found out the co-op players differ, but some of them want the hardest imaginable game. And if you do, you have it. Others want a little more friendly experience. So I would certainly recommend starting with what's printed and seeing which direction you want to go from there.
All right, well, Mike, thank you so much for showing us.
Well, thank you.
Hooyah.
Hooyah.
Can I say one of the more fun games to say
Yes.
the name of?
And people say it all, that's what they say when they're going on the ops. They say, hooyah, hooyah.